we'll move the discussion over to the forum. This live stream is being recorded and will be made available on our YouTube channel sometime next week. So if you're not able to stick around for the entire presentation, or if you'd like to share it with a friend, stop over to our channel and it will be waiting for you. With that, let's get started. This presentation will cover the following topics: the recent company name change, new board members, product updates, regulatory developments, and our 2019 go-to-market strategy. With that, I would take it away.
Hello, hello. Thanks for listening. This is exciting for me. This is our first of this series, and the point of this is to tell you all about the many things that the company's been doing. And before we do, I've got to mention that there are a lot more things going on in the world of Zcash besides what the company's doing. The foundation is doing a whole lot of things, and there are several groups of independent hackers that are doing all kinds of interesting work. And we don't have time to talk about any of that. So we're just going to tell you all about what the company's activities are right now. And then you need to go to the foundation and ask them what they're up to, because they're up to a lot. So the first thing I want to tell you about is the company renaming. We've been calling it, it was always technically, legally, the Zero Coin Electric Coin Company. And we've been calling it the Zcash Company colloquially, and that's what everyone called it in like the press and stuff. And we've just now renamed it to the Electric Coin Company in order to prevent confusion between the company and Zcash, the network itself, and the coin and the technology and all that. That was a big change. I'm excited about the ability to communicate to people that Zcash is a larger and more decentralized and independent thing than the company. Now, our company strategy has three pillars. It's to drive adoption while maintaining quality, and to invest in our team, and to promote further openness. And everything that we've prioritized and worked on falls into supporting one or more of those goals. And you're going to hear a lot about different things, and we don't have very much time. So I'm going to hand it over to our COO, DC, for the first announcement.
Great. Thanks a bunch, Zuko. All righty. Here to announce some new board members. So as companies mature, it's very common for the technology to mature. And in the case of Zcash, we've seen the technology mature through the overwinter upgrade and through the sapling upgrade that brought us tremendous performance increases, better security. But we're also super pleased to share with the world that the governance over the company itself has also been maturing. So we're really pleased to announce that joining Zuko, our fearless leader and CEO, on the board of directors is also Alan Fairless and Andrew McLaughlin. So I first met Alan at RSA, the RSA conference in San Francisco, a very long time ago when he was the founding CTO at Spider Oak. And I was immediately taken by the passion that Alan had for security and privacy. Spider Oak was a privacy-preserving file sharing service, sort of like Dropbox. But it was very clear from every interaction I had with the product and every interaction I had with the team that they put the security and privacy of their users first, which was very uncommon for a SaaS company that operated with a freemium product. So super excited to have Alan joining the team on the board of directors. And then Andrew McLaughlin is also joining us. And Andrew's list of professional accomplishments is so long that I've got to take out my crib sheet here. He's a lawyer by trade, but he is no stranger to the intersection of tech and policy. From 1999 to 2003, Andrew launched and helped run ICANN, which is the primary coordinating agency for the global internet. After that, he was the director of global public policy at Google from 2004 to 2009. And then from 2009 to 2011, he was the deputy chief technology officer for the United States, serving in President Obama's White House. So I had the distinct pleasure of working with both Andrew and Alan and the rest of the leadership team at a strategy offsite that we did just prior to ZCon 0 in Montreal last year. And it was really clear to me at that time that the unique perspectives that these two gentlemen brought to the company from that board level really helps us to differentiate, and I believe will really give us an edge to execute on our mission going forward. So please join me in welcoming Alan and Andrew to our board of directors. Elise?
Thank you, DC. Next, I'd like to introduce Nathan Wilcox, our CTO. Nathan, take it away.
All right, so next slide. So I'm going to be talking about product development updates. There's a few slides here, and I really feel like it just doesn't capture everything we're doing on the product and engineering fronts, but I'm going to go with what's here anyway. So as Zuko mentioned, we have 3 company top-level priorities. One of those is openness. And so the first thing I wanted to mention was how we are in this process of opening up development within the company to be able to collaborate with other organizations and other developers. And so one of the first things to talk about here is the ZIP process. So ZIP stands for Zcash Improvement Proposal. We sort of cribbed from Bitcoin here, which has demonstrated how that process can work in Bitcoin for open source development. So we sort of emulated that, but so far the work that the company has been doing has been just like largely sort of unilaterally decided upon within the company, and then we've been executing that. I mean, we've been having discussions and learning about from the community, but we haven't had like a framework or a formal way to interact with them. We have been creating zip documents, but that's been almost kind of a format thing. And now we're finally improving that process to like make it real and give it teeth. So we're doing that with the foundation, the Zcash Foundation. Let's see, another piece here is that we're working with the foundation, and we kind of have this agreement that as we move forward with a regular upgrade cycle, we want to sort of ratchet open the development of Zcash and the stakeholdership and the ownership with sensible steps at each stage, rather than trying to like design a new open development process from whole cloth and then jump into that. So we sort of have this ratcheting up plan. And so this first step of making the ZIP process real and inter-organizational is we're beginning with the NU3 upgrade, which I'll talk about in a bit. And so in that first step, what the foundation and the company are doing is we will be reviewing all of the ZIP proposals that come in, commenting on them. Each organization will commit to commenting on all of them. There's a framework for public discussion, and there's a timeline for public discussion. So we're hoping this first step is a way to ensure that like there's public feedback on all of the proposals. The proposals are open to anyone to submit. The reactions or interpretations or evaluations of the foundation and the company for each thing is known. And also the process of maturing the proposals from like the initial drafts to more mature forms will be public. People can follow that. So that is the new improvement. So for NU3, the company is still going to, at the end of the day, pick which of the proposals we think are good to implement. And then we're going to spend our effort implementing that and advocating for that to be part of the upgrade that activates. And in the future, we'll see, how, can we open up this process more? There's another piece to that process, which we call the network upgrade pipeline. So on the left side here, there's a little thumbnail. I want all of you to read all of the text down there. No, I'm just kidding. It's a thumbnail. So there's a larger version you can find from our website, and that's describing a lot of those milestones. But basically, this upgrade pipeline has two pieces. There's a schedule and then a set of milestones. So one of the features of the schedule is that it's fixed and pipelined to have 2 upgrades per year. The fact that it's fixed reinforces this notion that the upgrade pipeline is a tool for coordinating open development, both for developers, but also for users in the ecosystem to know when upgrades are coming, to know what is in the upgrades, to see the decision-making process for what's going into upgrades, and to see the development process. Also, the milestones make it clear like when different pieces should be done and handed off between parties. It opens the door for multiple organizations or parties to play different roles. So for example, Parity is beginning to work on a second Zcash full node implementation. So now they can see the schedule show up with the foundation and with us and know, when they need to be ready for a testnet implementation, for example. So those are 2 pieces, the zip and the nup, that I think are awesome steps at further opening Zcash development. So over here on the right side, we see a little circle for each of the upgrades, and it starts with the current status. So the current protocol is called Sapling. It's also called NU1. The numbering scheme, it may be a little bit confusing, but try not to worry too much about that. So next, I'm going to talk about these upgrades, and starting with Sapling, which is like where we are now, and also what's coming up. And then after talking about those, I'm going to talk about longer term, bigger picture stuff. So next slide. So there's a lot going on. It's hard to distill things down to 2 things, but that's what I've done here. And so I think these are 2 of the really big picture things to share with everyone. So the first one is the reference wallet. So Zuko mentioned another one of our goals is to promote adoption and while maintaining the strong quality that we've always had. The reference wallet is leveraging like one of the main benefits of Sapling. So hopefully you've heard of Sapling. If not, I'll just say that's our current protocol. And what it did was it enabled, it drastically improved the performance requirements for sending or for generating shielded transfers. But qualitatively, what that means is now shielded transfers are possible on mobile devices, whereas previously they were not. So with the reference wallet project, we are making an example, like a prototype that shows how that works on Sapling on real Android devices as like the first case. So it has 4 components. The first is the usability, the design, the interface. And that's actually a really big piece for us because so far we haven't had a front end, as many people will probably know. So, obviously that's going to hinder adoption potentially, but another really important piece there is that we, infrastructure and protocol engineers, might not always realize the implications of our design choices for usability. But now we have something we can look at, and when we see the hurdles or like the hurdles that the designer or design team has to go through, or what confusing or challenging things users are faced with in the design, we can finally connect the dots to like all of the protocol and engineering work we're doing. And we can say, oh, if we change this thing down in the protocol, maybe it could make the usability of a nice wallet better. So that's like the first piece. Then there's 3 other pieces. So the Android SDK, the goal here is to make it an SDK, an API for Android developers that makes it very simple. So if you already have an Android wallet, you can use this SDK to figure out how to support Sapling. And you can use the UX to understand how, as like an example for how to map that to your particular wallet. The next piece is called librus-zcash. So that's also on the phone, sort of below the Android layer. So if you're a wallet vendor, you might not need to care too much about it, but I think it's great to share here because I'm really excited about it. Librus-zcash is where all of the core crypto code and also wallet management code is for the new sapling stuff. And a feature of this, of like the code base, is that we're able to reuse it on different platforms. So it's also the same code base that we're using in our full node. Right now, these are different revisions, different branches, but eventually it will be like the same software component we can use both on our full node, on desktop machines, on server machines, on mobile machines. It's also plausible that we can make it work in a web context. So that's something we're thinking about. So that's another component. The last component is called Light Wallet D. And this is a piece that's running next to full nodes on a service provider. And the function it's serving is, it is sort of distilling the information from the blockchain that's necessary to support the mobile clients and then shipping it to them through this protocol. Part of the protocol is in the next bullet, it's called ZIP 307. And there's actually an important surprising piece here that I think sometimes may get missed when people are thinking about a sapling supporting wallet. And that is, this wallet is designed so that as a user on your mobile phone, not only do you have privacy because you're creating shielded transactions locally on your phone, but there's the subtle point that many users often overlook, is that the service provider can see a lot about what you're doing. This wallet is designed to provide privacy guarantees even against the service provider. And I think that is rather unusual in the space. And I think that's valuable, and we're really excited about that. So now that we have this reference wallet, the code has just been released recently, and we're talking to wallet vendors, and we're really excited to help them integrate this and to learn what challenges they face either with their users or with the process of integrating it. And so we're sort of at that stage right now, starting these discussions, sharing this wallet, and showing them this prototype. So if you're excited about this, which I hope you are, you can show up to our community chat, and there's a reference wallet channel there. And if you want to get in touch with us, talk to our engineers about integrating it into wallets, or learning more about it, get in touch with Brad. His email address is there. So that's the reference wallet. Another big piece here is Sprout to sapling migration. And I kind of have a gap in these slides. So I'm going to go on a bit of a tangent here, because one of the pieces here is about counterfeit protection. But there's sort of an elephant in the room, which is we discovered and mitigated a substantial vulnerability in the original Sprout protocol. So we mitigated that. When sapling activated, it closed that vulnerability. And we do not believe there has been any compromise, and we have some evidence that sort of informs our bet here, but it is our bet. It's kind of unknown. So I wanted to mention that, but we've always known that this is a possibility, and we've designed Zcash from the start with that in mind. And so in security engineering, there's this concept called belt and suspenders, and it is you design a system to be secure, but then you also try to ensure protection and security even if components fail. So like if you're driving a car, you wear a seatbelt, but then you also have an airbag just in case, right? Let's have some redundancy. So since the beginning, we've had part of the design that is intended to protect the monetary supply schedule specifically. And that's called the turnstile, or the turnstile design. So each shielded pool, each shielded address type is associated with a pool of funds. Funds that move around inside that shielded pool have strong privacy guarantees. So right now there's a sprout pool and a sapling pool. But by design, the only way for funds to get into a pool or to come out of a pool require revealing the amount that's going in or coming out. So if you have funds in a transparent address and you send them to a Sprout address, the amount is known. If you send it out from Sprout to a transparent address, the amount is known. If you send it from a Sprout address to another Sprout address, the amount is not known. That's where you get the strong privacy protections. So transfers can be happening privately within these pools, within Sprout or within Sapling. Now, if there is a counterfeiting vulnerability and it gets compromised, that means somebody's taking advantage of a bug. An attacker has figured out the bug, figured out how to take advantage of it. What they can do with that is they can generate Zcash units that didn't originally come from the block rewards. So that's sort of violating the monetary supply schedule, and that's bad. If that happens, that attacker can send, I just want to clarify this bit. If that happens, the attacker can send those newly created units to someone else. That other person most likely will have no way to tell that they were counterfeited. And then they'll do some sort of economic exchange. And in that case, that attacker is sort of taking advantage of the system to interact with someone else. So for example, they could buy a hamburger from someone and then eat that hamburger. There's no way to undo the eating of the hamburger or that trade once that counterfeiting has happened. So that's a bit of a tangent. Back to the turnstile, if this counterfeiting happens within a shielded pool, there's no way for us to detect that by design because Zcash has really strong privacy. And there's also no way for the users interacting to detect that. But at a 10,000 foot view, for the overall system, we can still count how many funds are going into or out of a pool through the turnstile. So what can we do if there is counterfeiting within a pool? Eventually, the way we could detect that from a systemic perspective is that the amount of funds that exit the pool will be larger than the amount that ever went in. So if we detect that, we at the company have adopted a policy that what we want to do is protect the monetary supply schedule. We don't believe there's any way to protect the users who were already harmed by the counterfeiting. And if we don't protect that monetary supply schedule, it can harm all users. So the policy we've chosen to back is that we just will prevent Zcash from leaving the pool if that count goes to 0. So if it goes to 0, and there has been counterfeiting, that means some users will have funds within a pool and they will be unable to remove them from that pool. So I just want to make all of that super clear. And sorry, there wasn't a slide for that. So that was sort of a long tangent. But that finally gives us some background for these 2 bullet points. The second bullet point, counterfeit protection upgrade, that is just implementing the policy I just described. And so we argue that this isn't actually changing much for users functionally because we already have this policy and we would already use what we could at our disposal to protect the monetary supply. Adding this code is just making that clearer to everyone and sort of automating it so they don't have to rely on the company as much. There's a third benefit once it's written in code. If people want to advocate for changing the policy, they can now talk about the code. They can submit zips. And so that's that. That's coming out with 205. So finally, this connects to the first bullet point with which is this migration tool. So the migration tool isn't actually directly connected to counterfeit vulnerabilities at all. It's just a way to migrate funds from Sprout to Sapling. Users can already do that today by just, if you have a Sprout address, transfer to a transparent address, and then transfer to a Sapling address. The reason, one reason that users should have caution if they do that is that there could be privacy implications where people who analyze the blockchain after the fact could figure out potentially which users, how many users there are and who have done that sort of process. And for those users, what their balances were at the time they did the migration. If you want to do that, you don't want to wait for the migration tool, but you still want to protect your privacy. We have some documentation about that on our Read the Docs page. So we can hopefully direct you to that with some links. And otherwise, if you wait for this tool, it'll just work easily. Oh, I should also mention there is a third-party tool that does something really similar to our design, and we worked with them on our design, and that has been called ZecQT Wallet, but now it's called Zec Wallet. So it already has this tool also if you want to do sort of, if you want a tool to help you with the migration and you want to do it today, you could use that wallet. Okay, so those are highlights going on today. Like I said, there's a lot of other stuff going on, but those are two big ones to call out. Let's talk about the next upgrades. So next slide. So the upcoming upgrades are in U2 and in U3. In U2 has the codename Blossom and it has this super cute logo, which I love. And there's just two planned changes for Blossom. One is shorter block target time, and one is called split founders reward. So shorter block target spacing, one of the main impacts for all users is that they will have to wait less time for the same amount of the same number of confirmations. So this should just make transactions faster for everyone. We hope that's a benefit that kind of has some ripple effects, and hopefully it's clear to see that that is beneficial to folks. There are some costs, like it's going to increase the operational cost of running nodes and maybe some other protocol things, and we will address those as they surface. Split founders reward doesn't actually affect users really. It doesn't change anything about the founders reward schedule or amount. What it does is right now, you can think of the founders reward as like one stream of funds that are equal to 20% of the block rewards. And then those get distributed to various recipients, including the fundee, the company, Electric Coin Company. That's how we fund most of our operations to do all of our development of Zcash and our other work. That the recipients also include the foundation, so that's how they get almost all of their funding, I believe. And by splitting it, this has several potential advantages. So it's allowing the organizations to be more separate, like operationally, and it's sort of baking in the amount of funds they're getting. So it's sort of compartmentalizing these organizations internally. An interesting detail about that zip is you can sort of see the breakdown of the funds we're going to propose. I don't think we've put them in the specification yet, but I think we should be doing that soonish. So that might be of interest for people who are maybe not every user, but people who are interested in transparency. So NU3 doesn't have a name yet, and it doesn't have a cute logo, but I hope it gets both of those soonish. And like I mentioned initially, with this new zip process, so we are in the process right now of accepting draft zips and reviewing them and public discussion and maturing those. So if you want to review things which are proposed and comment on them, now is a good time to show up. And also, if you want to propose your own, now is a good time to show up and do that. And you can start that process and that conversation. So I wanted to talk about a few. Inside the company, we have a list of, I think, 6 or maybe 7 proposals that we're working on. And so I'm just going to call out 2 here. One is called detection keys. This is a way to potentially improve mobile wallet support even more so that it uses less bandwidth. The other is disabling Sprout address receive capability. It's kind of a mouthful, but what that would mean if this proposal is accepted and then it activates. Sorry, I should mention the timeline. So NU2 is intended to activate in October of 2019. NU3 is intended to activate in April of 2020, I believe. So if disabling Sprout address receive capability is specified and accepted and implemented and activates in April of 2020, what that would mean is after that date, you can no longer receive transfers into a Sprout address. So the only thing you will be able to do is just let them sit there or transfer them elsewhere to a T address or migrate them to a Sprout address. So that's all current work on upcoming upgrades. And then the final slide next is about longer term. Oh, back one, right. Longer term. So in the next quarter, we intend to ramp up a more explicit long-term research sort of process within the company. We've already been, we've always been doing research within our company. And this is an effort to sort of focus that a little bit on long-range goals for Zcash. So I mentioned a few goals here. There's other goals in contention that we're constantly evaluating or considering based on what we think matters for adoption. So what matters to users or potential users. But right now we've been discussing horizontal scalability and programmability as long-term research projects. How am I doing on time? Should I? Okay. So I wanted to mention, so I want to talk a little bit about scalability and our vision here. So because adoption is one of our driving goals, we care a lot about usability. We want to drive adoption and maintain quality. We care about security. So we want to pay a lot of attention to usability, ensuring the usable thing is secure, and making sure that usability helps with adoption, which includes onboarding new users and then for the existing users using the product. So we want to keep that in mind when we look at any long-term planning like scalability or programmability. And that's actually informing how we think about scalability a lot. So for example, the current usability of Zcash is that if you want to send Zcash, all you need is, if you want to send to a sapling address, all you need is the sapling address, and then you need some Zcash, and then you can send to that address and post that transaction. Eventually, it will get confirmed and finalized, or else it will fail for various reasons. And that's the usability in a nutshell that is the basis of everything. If you think about how to onboard users to Zcash or to another cryptocurrency, the first thing they always must do by definition is receive the asset. So we want to make it as convenient as possible to receive Zcash for the first time. I think this is really important. And I'm really interested in use cases outside of like speculating on exchanges as ways for people to receive Zcash for the first time, such as for performing services or selling things. So that's something we're keeping in mind when we talk about scalability. Horizontal scalability is kind of a technical term, but what it means is the ability of the network to process transactions grows as more infrastructure is added, it joins the network. So if it is possible to provide some kind of incentive for people to join this permissionless network to provide some kind of infrastructure, if they have an incentive to join and provide that infrastructure as the usage grows of end users, then horizontal scalability will enable the network to grow along a really rapid S-curve to a really large number of users who can continue using it with the same usability. So I think if we are able to sort of nail those goals in our scalability design, that is a way we can make Zcash usable by people all over the world in a permissionless system. And so I'm really excited about that possibility. So we're going to start looking at it seriously in the next quarter and see what we can learn about that. Programmability is something we've also already been doing research into. It's something we're interested in. And we're continuing to watch other use cases, other smart contract platforms, and the use cases they enable and learning from those use cases. Yeah, so that is also something we will be looking into. Both of these are long-term, so we have no plans to deploy anything. These aren't network upgrade goals at this point, but these are things we are going to put effort into learning more about. So I think that's it for all of the product development stuff. So thank you, Elise.
Thank you, Nathan. All right, now we'd like to move on to regulatory developments with Jack Gavigan, Product and Regulatory Relations. Jack?
Hey, thank you, Elise. Regulation is not the most exciting and interesting part of the work we do here at the Electric Coin Company, but it is fairly important. Over the past year or so, there's been a lot of focus on the potential uses of virtual currencies by criminals, both in the context of cyber crimes like ransomware, where the ransom is demanded in Bitcoin or whatever, and the theft of virtual currencies from exchanges. And there's also growing perception that there's a risk that criminals and terrorists might be using virtual currencies for money laundering or terrorist financing. Whether those risks are being borne out in reality is another question, but certainly there's been a lot of attention. Now, some jurisdictions like the United States have moved fairly swiftly to implement anti-money laundering regulations on the virtual currency sector. Others like the UK have moved a lot slower. But we spend a lot of time talking to regulators and policymakers about what they're planning to do. They often have misconceptions about what a privacy-preserving virtual currency like Zcash means in the context of preventing money laundering. So we educate them about how Zcash works, how the technology that underpins Zcash functions, and what the implications are for compliance with anti-money laundering regulations. And we do that both through direct engagement, direct conversations and meetings, and indirectly through organizations like the Blockchain Association and Global Digital Finance. And we also support the work of organizations like Coin Center, who are really leading the charge in Washington to make sure that legislators and policymakers there understand the importance of keeping digital cash effectively, private methods of payment available for people, and the importance of that to our open society. The bottom line is that Zcash and other similar privacy-preserving virtual currencies are entirely compatible with anti-money laundering regulations, and with many of the common traditional techniques that banks and other financial institutions use to prevent money laundering. Things like know your customer checks, customer due diligence, customer activity monitoring, making suspicious activity reports, and so on. We engage with regulators and policymakers. We help them understand the fact that Zcash is compatible with those things, and the end result is you see regulators approving organizations like Gemini to list Zcash in New York under the BIT license. So we feel like we're making a lot of progress there. One major area of focus right now is the work that FATF is doing in this space. FATF is a global intergovernmental organization which focuses on setting standards for combating money laundering. So a lot of the anti-money laundering rules that are implemented are actually derived from FATF recommendations. And FATF late last year began to focus on virtual currencies because there's been such a lot of attention on it. The good news there is that they appear to be going in the right direction. The approach that they're taking is what's referred to in the financial sector as risk-based, which means that instead of setting very, very binary rules, like you're allowed to do this and you're not allowed to do that, they are recommending that organizations be allowed to assess the risk of a particular type of business and then to put in place the appropriate measures to mitigate or manage that risk. And like I said before, Zcash is compatible with many of those measures that are traditionally used by banks, money services businesses, and so on to prevent money laundering. So whilst it's an area that we focus on a lot and we keep a very close eye on, we feel like globally things are moving in the right direction. Of course, individual countries can go their own direction. They can choose to impose restrictions or measures that are more onerous than those that are recommended by organizations like FATF. And we keep an eye out for those. We seek to reach out to the regulators and policymakers in such places, build relationships with them, engage with them, and help educate them. I think it's no coincidence that Zuko and Josh have recently been in Tokyo as part of their trip throughout Asia. Like I said, it's not the most interesting part of the work that we do here at the Electric Coin Company. So I'm not gonna take up any more time. But suffice to say that I think it's an important part of what we do, and it's something that I think we are being successful at doing. We get some very good feedback from regulators and policymakers on the way that we engage with them, the way that we educate them, and ultimately, they often through talking to us, they understand that number one, that Zcash is compatible, but also more importantly that the privacy that Zcash provides is of benefit to consumers and to companies who are either currently using or are likely to use in the future virtual currencies as part of their business. So with that, I'll hand it back to Elise.
Thank you, Jack. Now I'd like to introduce Josh Swihart, our VP of Marketing and Business Development. Josh, take it away.
Thanks, Elise. And Dodger, I think it's interesting. So thanks for covering that. I'm going to go through go-to-market activities, things that we did a little bit last year, kind of the approach that we took, as well as what we're looking at doing in the first and second quarter of this year. Before I get into some of that, I do want to call out Commerce with a K, who are hosting Zuko and I this morning. So we are in Singapore, live from Singapore, and we had to get up very early this morning and scavenge for some coffee and get over here to Commerce. So Commerce is allowing us to kind of squat in their space, and thank you to Karen for allowing us to make that happen. Check out their site. They're doing some pretty cool stuff in Africa, enabling more people to participate in our global economy. So it's pretty cool. There are 3 blog posts out on Zcash. And so I'm not going to try to cover everything that's in those blog posts. I would encourage you, if you're interested in this stuff, to go read them. And then I'm just going to give you a couple highlights of some things. So let's jump to the next slide. So one of the things that we did last year was really take a look at our mission and what the company was intending to do and why we're such believers in Zcash and this project and this community. And it's just really about empowering everyone with economic freedom and opportunity. And so, historically, we have done a great job of engaging with cryptographers and engineers, pioneers in this space, cypherpunks. But, the audience that we want to reach is much broader. And so one of the things that we did is to take a look at the brand, and we built a new website for Zcash and tried to make the language a little bit more accessible for more people. Created a framework that allow us to publish content there in the long term, but also allow other people to publish content, like the foundation in the long term, is to start to create that infrastructure. So that's one of the things that you saw from us this last year. If we hit the next one, Elise. We also started publishing different forms of content. We're trying different ways of engaging more people. So one of the things that we did was at last ZCon 0 is we spent some time with various thought leaders in the space to kind of understand their perspective on different things that they're working on, as well as their perspectives on privacy. We recorded those sessions, and we published them on our blog post, on our blog over a period of time. And so that is a kind of an example of some of the kinds of content and engagement that we've started experimenting with last year, and we'll continue to experiment and make available this year. We hit the next one. This is, Dodger talked about the importance of educating regulators and folks that are looking at policy. And it's not just policy for digital currencies. It's other policies related to personal data and personal privacy. So this team, in conjunction with Lease Authority, conducted a study, worked with third party, conduct a study on whether or not Zcash was compatible with GDPR. So if you're not familiar with GDPR, I won't go into all the details, but this just to say that it's legislation within Europe that provides protection for users so that their data isn't exposed on the web, and that they have control about what data is exposed or given to companies. I was talking to a retailer, actually a conglomerate, who has a number of retailers. And one of the reasons they reached out and then we had a conversation is because part of GDPR and part of their, what they're trying to do as a business, they would like to be able to accept cryptocurrencies, but they can't accept Bitcoin. They can't accept any currencies that don't support privacy, because all of the data from the sender to their wallet, the receiver, and the value, all of that is exposed. Right? It's exposed to their competitors. It's exposed to potential hackers. And so for them, using something that isn't privacy protecting is a non-starter. And I think that's really kind of important as we look at reframing the narrative and kind of moving away from this idea of a privacy coin to an expectation of doing financial dealings online. If you want the details of that study, that is also available on the Zcash blog. You can go find it there. So the next one, one of the things that we do as a company is we spend a significant amount of time also engaging with third parties. So I often get asked is like, what does business development mean for a cryptocurrency? And why would you be doing this if you're not like selling to enterprise clients? The reality is there's a lot of players in the space. And if we're going to engage with everyone, we want to be fundamentally aligned with those that are doing great work with big audiences. They can help accelerate and drive our message forward. They can do things like provide liquidity and access to funds in places that we can't get to. They can help store your Zcash safely. They can bring investors in and provide education about what Zcash is and why it's important. So this is an example of some of the folks that we've been working with and onboarded over the course of these last few months, and continue to work with and partner with. One example, if you hit the next one, it's kind of an intersection of engaging with a partner and providing education. Often we get asked to provide airdrop funds, right? So an exchange wants to list Zcash. They want to help offset the cost and build liquidity on their platform without having to provide the liquidity themselves. And that's something we've typically stayed away from. So we don't pay listing fees and that kind of thing. But one of the things we did agree to was to partner with Coinbase on their Earn campaign. So we provided 15,500 ZEC to be used across 2 campaigns in conjunction with their listing, worked with them on educational content, so 3 videos that then have 3 questions, and then they send that out to their various users. And they allow for some kind of segmentation, and they give us metrics and data, and at some point we'll hopefully be able to share all of that data with you. But the results have been really positive. And if you haven't checked out the videos, I encourage you to check out the videos, even if you know Zcash, and let us know what you think. Let us know what you think about the positioning. But this was a fairly substantive expense for us. There's other projects that are doing this with Coinbase. I think without exception, they're all putting in a lot more money than we put in. But we, again, we will run another campaign with them with the funds that have already been allocated. So let's do the next one. So going into 2019, one of the things I've outlined in one of those blog posts is our work in Asia. And Zuko, as I mentioned, Zuko and I are out in Singapore right now. We just got done finishing with Tokyo, or we thought we got done, but we got asked to return. So that's pretty interesting. And so we will fly to Korea the beginning of next week for that week, and then we'll make another day trip into Tokyo. And part of this is understanding the landscape, so who the projects are and who the exchanges are, and visiting exchanges offices and seeing the challenges and who are their customers, and just learning a ton. Another is engaging with the community. So we've got meetups in each of these cities, and there's a whole range of people that show up to these meetups, and some are very well educated on Zcash and some are brand new. So we get a wide range of questions. But we're seeing great turnout and great engagement and interest in Zcash. Zcash is well respected around the world, which is fantastic, even though we haven't spent a ton of time in Asia. And then the third thing, as Dodger alluded to, is meeting with regulators in each of these geographies and influencers of those regulators, those that are educating them to, again, better understand what the concerns are. One of the things that we learned on this last trip to Japan, if you weren't aware, so Zcash is not traded on any exchanges in Japan. And we had thought that there was an outright ban on Zcash in Japan. It turns out that's not the case. It turns out that there's language that an SRO, which is a self-regulating organization called JVCEA, and the JFSA, which is the financial regulatory body of Japan, put together some language that basically says we don't want, we don't want to support currencies that promote criminal activity. And there's a set. It's a little bit more complicated than that. There's a set of kind of constraints, and so we are kind of working through kind of better understanding that language, thought behind the language, and providing education on why Zcash isn't used by criminals, but is used and intended for law-abiding citizens. And so that's part of what we're doing. We're working with a number of partners on reframing the narrative. So again, moving away from the idea of a privacy coin or a dark coin or anonymous coin or whatever it's called, and just resetting an expectation that this is necessary for doing financial work in a decentralized way. We're working with various wallets and exchanges on shielded support now that we have Sprout, and that wallet work that Nathan alluded to, hugely important for helping us drive adoption with those folks. So hopefully we'll have some more news on that in the coming weeks and months. We are working on increasing transparency. So things like this live stream, some other data, and some things like that that we will produce and make available in the coming weeks and months. And we're getting out at various things. So we've got like 14 different events that we're participating in late March through June. And then finally, we still do a lot of work on trademark protection. So the number one marketing spend for last year was on trademark protection and work across various countries. And so that will continue to be, a focus for us this 2019. The last thing, well, there's actually two more super quick things that I'll mention if you want to jump to the next one. One of the other things that we're doing, and I'm not going to go into all of this, is we're working on persona. We're doing a lot of persona research, trying to do a better job of figuring out who's using Zcash, who do we want using Zcash, what are their behaviors, what does it look like over time, how do we reduce friction, and working on this both kind of at a macro level as well as some micro experimentation, and hope there's some kind of interesting projects that we're working on that I hope to be able to share with you coming up soon. And then the last slide I've got, the other thing that we're doing, and this is all work that we're doing this quarter, is Zuko mentioned we changed the name. So we are going to roll out a new brand for the Electric Coin Company, and we're going to segment the Electric Coin Company from the Z.Cash site so that it's more clear. So Electric Coin Company will have its own site. Z.Cash will be about Zcash and not about the company, and will provide mechanisms to allow for other folks like the foundation to participate in promoting and providing information about Zcash. So that's what we've got coming up this quarter. That's it for me.
Great, thanks, Josh. All right, now that brings us to our AMA portion of the program. Let's see what questions we have in the queue. All right, we have a question from Ramesh. Any plans to use ZEC for financial smart contract settlements on the ETH platform? Zuko or Nathan, would you like to take that?
I will. We've studied the different technologies that could do sort of side chaining or some kind of interoperation between different blockchains, especially Ethereum. And we're getting a lot of encouragement and support, especially just recently, just in the last few weeks, really, there's been a resurgence of energy from the Ethereum side. So I'm enthusiastic about getting a bunch of help from them. By the way, also we're getting the same sort of enthusiasm from Cosmos, which is a new recently launched thing. I'm excited about the possibility because Ethereum doesn't have privacy and Zcash doesn't have smart contracts. And so it's like chocolate and peanut butter, or it's like two different kinds of meat that go well together. That's my answer. Next.
Okay, I love it. All right, let's see. Our next question is from Matt. Zcash is by far the dominant Equihash coin, yet its footprint in Latin America and Africa is vanishingly small. Why is this? Josh, can you take that one?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I think
I disagree with the question myself.
There is, well, yeah, I think the assertion that it's small. I think that we do have evidence of significant use within Latin America, specifically an interest within Latin America.
And South Africa.
Yeah, and South Africa as well, right? So there's another exchange that added Zcash in South Africa this week as well. But I think, in part, there's a couple use cases that are really important. One is the currency as a store of value right now in places where there's a significant amount of hyperinflation. So we are seeing Zcash being used in those contexts. We are working with partners like RTM to support them in the geographies as well. And then I think we have a lot of work to do broadly for use as a medium of exchange. So there's some really unique challenges. So for example, in Venezuela, I think most people have very old versions of Android. And so, their ability to actually use Zcash on a mobile device, even with a reference wallet, is somewhat encumbered. So as we look at ways to reduce friction for people in those countries and those geographies, Those kinds of considerations are really important. So we're active and engaging, but I think it's going to take a little time.
All right, thanks a lot, Josh. I have a question for Nathan. The question is, when will privacy by default be implemented for ZEC, and when will hardware wallets support Z addresses?
Okay, yeah, those are great questions. They're also related. So today, we have transparent addresses and we have shielded addresses, private addresses. The transparent stuff, all of the transparent stuff is very similar to Bitcoin. So the benefit to having it in the first place, like the reason we have it, is it allows people to integrate with Zcash quickly if they already have Bitcoin tooling. So a great example is hardware wallets. Hardware wallets can do Bitcoin and they can do transparent Zcash. We do want to move to privacy by default or even ubiquitous shielding. And of course, users always should have the option and capability to reveal what they want to third parties with like view keys or what we call selective disclosures, which are transaction specific. But to get there, we want to make sure that we see like sufficient adoption first of the privacy stuff. So like I mentioned, we were working on this mobile wallet. We want to see, we want to make sure there's mobile wallets. It would be nice if there were hardware support for, support for hardware wallets. If exchanges supported it, if we had clear signs that that was happening, then we could move to, more quickly to deprecate transparent stuff. So that's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Next question for Zuko. Is the Electric Coin Company or Starkware putting Zcash privacy technology into other coins? If so, how will Zcash stay unique?
Yeah, they're not just Starkware, but there's lots of different attempts to make new privacy technology or to backfit privacy technology onto existing coins. Eventually, I think in like 10 years, there are just not going to be any transparency coins left. And the question was something like, how can Zcash stay unique? Well, our strategy is to drive adoption while maintaining quality. And it's better to, I believe it's better to focus on what we can do well and to focus on the users and finding the things that the users need and not to worry about competition. Like our job is to execute and to produce value and to improve Zcash. It's not our job to worry about competition. I really like to learn from competitors. Like we're co-founders and close collaborators and ongoing collaborators with Starkware and Tezos and Ethereum and all that other stuff. It's someone else's job. That's like an investor or a speculator or someone. It's their job to pick winners and who they think is going to be the winner 5 or 10 years from now. And it's not my job, thank goodness. One tiny bit of advice I would give to investors is be careful of the temptation to, somebody might want to persuade you to invest in their coin by talking about how great their coin's going to be in 5 or 10 years. And that's an important bit of input for you, but also pay attention to what it does today and how it has changed over time over the last like 1 or 2 or however many years it's existed. Anyway, so my answer is we're just going to keep improving Zcash. We talked earlier about the long-term plan. The next part that I'm really excited about is horizontal scalability without hampering usability. That's my answer.
Okay, great answer. Thank you. Next question is for Nathan. The question is, why are there only 2 goals in Blossom?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if you followed the Blossom process, you probably would have followed it closely, like looking at posts on our forum or discussions on our forum or on our GitHub. You probably would have seen that we had like a much larger wish list of maybe 8 items that we were interested in. So there are a couple of reasons it is down to 2 now. One of the reasons is we were behind on the network upgrade pipeline schedule. And I decided that it's very important to stick to the schedule because of the coordination benefit of people knowing when the upgrade happens and what the phases are. So because we were behind, the best option was to cut down on the scope. There were some other symptoms of being behind. One was like the way we managed the public discussion and feedback didn't work out very well. It was like way too much of a time crunch. There was contention about some of the issues. So especially one called harmony mining, some of you may have heard of, which we've tabled for the time being. So the outcome of that process is we decided to stick to the network upgrade process because especially because we wanted to coordinate with the ecosystem, but especially we wanted to focus on opening up the development process and improving the feedback and proposal process and the analysis of proposals instead of postponing things to try to fit more features in. And additionally, we don't want to cut corners or sacrifice on quality. So the remaining option is to cut down the scope. And we chose the faster block times because it seems like that is one of the goals that was least controversial, fairly easy to do engineering wise, although there are still challenges, and has an obvious benefit to everyone. So that's what we went forward with. Thanks.
Thanks, Nathan. We have one last question before we move this discussion to the forum, and that's for you, Josh, if you're willing to take that. The question is, are any of the third-party companies close to implementing Z addresses?
Yes. So I think, so yes, there are. We're having active discussions with a number of wallet providers and a number of exchanges. And so in some cases, there's still some technical challenges based upon hardware and things like that. In some cases, like the reference wallet work that's done is early work. And so we're doing architectural validation and working with some folks on that to ensure that it will work. We have some verbal commitments out there to implement this year from a number of wallets. But the work is still ahead of us to get that done. But there is active interest in supporting Z addresses. The other thing that the encouragement for the community is that in some cases, wallet providers are trying to figure out how to prioritize their work, right? So what is their community saying they really want? And so they're like, in some cases, we've had conversations it's like, well, users, we already support Zcash, but if the users come and they say that it's really important to them, then we can prioritize that work ahead of the queue. So I really encourage you to reach out to your favorite wallet providers, your favorite exchanges, and advocate for supporting shielded addresses. That would help us a ton.
All right, thanks, Josh. Well, that about wraps up our live stream broadcast for today. Any remaining questions will be moved to the forum. If you look for the thread titled live stream 2019 Q1, you'll find that we'll be jumping over there and answering your questions. The whole team will be there, so feel free to add additional questions or to check back if you have other things to do. Also, I'd like to encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can be alerted about future live stream events, as well as subscribe to our newsletter right on the homepage of our website, or follow us on Twitter at ZCashCo. Thanks for joining us. We hope you found this to be useful, and we look forward to seeing you in June when we have the next live stream broadcast from the Electric Coin Company. Thank you, everyone.